Okay, this should be working. It's been a while since I've recorded anything, so hopefully everything is good, but we're going to say that it is. Hello, my name is Max. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I am a video editor and photographer. For the past couple months, I've been making some really creepy pictures, and people have been asking me how I do that, like how I edit these pictures in post. So I am going to show that today. Let's take a look. See that right? So this is one of them. This is one of the pictures, and I'll show you the four examples we're going to be going through today. We're going to go through this one, this one, this one, and this one. Now, a lot of these are, all of them are self-portraits. I've only ever done self-portraiture for my horror work. I've never done it of anyone else. That is not exclusive, that is not limited, but I'll also go through how I shot these pictures and how you edit them in post, stuff like that. So let's start with this one because this is a little bit interesting. Working with horror images, depending on, sometimes it's good to know when you're taking the picture and when you're developing it. When you are making creepy pictures, a lot of the time it's very dark in the picture. There's a lot of shadows. There's not a lot of features you want to give because revealing the monster entirely won't make it creepy at all, but shadowing the monster too much will make it so that people won't know what they're looking at. So you want to balance this out. This picture is difficult because depending on what screen you're looking at it with, you're not going to see the silhouette that's right here along the character in the image. In fact, on this screen I'm looking at right now, I can't see that silhouette. I can't see the outline. But on the screen I have over here that I'm recording on, I can see the silhouette just fine. So depending on how high the contrast is on your computer or on your phone screen, it's going to look a little bit different. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making photos, is that you really want to balance the contrast and how much you show and how much you hide with your shadows and your contrast and everything like that. So how I took this picture was essentially, and I will go through the layers over here first to demonstrate most of this. I started off with one picture and I only ever used one picture. And that is this image right here. Is that image? Hold on a second. Am I right in that? No, it's not. I edited that even. Oh, that's not good. Huh. Okay, no, it was this image. I'm sorry. So this was the image that I used to edit this picture from. Essentially, I went over to a place that I work, stood in the corner, and just kind of stood there ominously because I knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to transform this into like an alternate kind of individual from the Mandela catalog. That was the inspiration. So I stood in the corner, and then as I progressed through editing, I decided to take away and add certain things. This was taken away eventually too. I actually did take two pictures, I think, to cover that up. But the first thing I did was I made this arm longer with this layer right here. How I did that specifically was I grabbed the lasso tool. I carved out my hand. This is a very loose demonstration. No, I don't want to do generative fill. Stop it. I know what I'm doing. Can you go away? Sidebar. There we go. And then if I'm selected on the right layer, make sure you're selected on the right layer when you're doing this, because this selection that you make is going to pull from whatever layer you're selected on here. You're going to do layer via cut or layer via copy. If you copy, it's just going to take this and make a new layer similar to this, where now it is its own layer, and I can move that. Nope. And I can move that around independently. If I layer via cut, what it's going to do is, oh, come on, work with me. You have to go back to the same tool. If I layer via cut, it's going to take that out completely. It's going to cut whatever I selected out of the image, remove it from the layer you selected, and put it onto a new layer, which is why if I go transparent on this layer, it disappears and it just shows the black void of which I cut it from. I don't like cutting very much, so I usually just layer via copy and to make something like this. So what I did was, and we'll go through this again, I layer via copy it, and then I go to my selection tool and I drag down, and I kind of drag the hand down, and then I'll add some feathering with the eraser tool like that. Again, this is very, very rough draft right now. And then if I want to duplicate the shadows, I'll do something different. What I'll do there is I will go to the clone stamp tool. Let's see. I will select a part above the image. I have to go back down to the bottom. So you have to select a different layer that you want to pull the image from. Go up to the top and then create shadows like this. See, it's pulling from whatever is up above it, and then it folds it down there. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to use each tool separately depending on what you want. Eventually, you'll get something like this. What I essentially did is I grabbed all that stuff from right here, and I dragged it all the way down by copying the selection that I made, duplicating it, putting it down, and using the eraser tool to kind of feather the outside of it to make sure that it looks good. For the eraser tool, there is a hardness here. That's how I feather it. And so it's not, if you're using your eraser and it's creating a hard edge where you want it to be soft and kind of blending in with everything else, that's what you want to change. You want to change the hardness scale. And how you do that is you just go to the eraser tool, right click, and then you go to the hardness scale right here. So that's how I changed the arm itself. We're going to take this out because this is layer we just created. We don't want that. All these other layers, the ones in red, I have those highlighted in red because I don't want them. They're uses that I didn't end up using, that I discarded, but I didn't want to delete them for some reason. Don't remember why I didn't want to delete them. I just didn't want to delete them. I wanted to keep the layers there even though I didn't want them visible. So I marked them as red and ignored them. Let's see, what did I do next? Next thing I did, I think, is I copied some kind of black space to cover up the green exit sign flash here, the motion sensor, I think it is. I covered that up using a separate picture, I believe, that I took. So one thing you can do that'll save you some time is take multiple pictures of the same scene on set with and without the subject, and if the scene changes, take pictures of different states of the scene. Like, for example, if you're taking a picture of a highway and you want an empty highway, but there are cars constantly driving on it, what you can do is you can take a bunch of different pictures of the highway, and then if there's one picture where there is a car, but you don't want that car there, and you have another picture where the car isn't there, just take a piece from that picture and put it over top of the other, right? And that's what I did with this, is I had one picture where this was showing, this green light. I took another picture where it wasn't because it was a flashing light, and I took the part of the picture where there wasn't a flashing light and I put it over this one, if that makes sense. Also, the reason why the hand here changes too, in this version, you might be able to see I'm holding a remote right here. Right here, there's a remote in my hand. That's how I do my self-portraits. I have to put my camera on a tripod, I step back and I click a shutter, and then that takes care of it. I click a remote and the shutter goes. So what I do is I take two pictures, one with a remote in each hand, so I can Photoshop the hand without the remote, picture with the hand without the remote, into the final piece so it looks like I'm not holding anything in my hands. Even though my hands kind of do look like they're holding something, but you don't see a remote actively, so it's fine. So that's what that layer does. Just kind of polishing it, just kind of making it everything I want it to be. This next picture is adding in the head. What I did in this bottom row, which by the way, never edit your original layer. I messed up when I made this one, and I did. I already elongated the neck here. Again, if you can't see that, it's because the contrast on your screen might be a little bit too low or too high. So the silhouette might not be showing up. But there is a neck here. And what I did is I kind of stretched it out using the liquify tool. I don't remember where that is. I used a smudge tool or the liquify tool. And let's see, where is that? I think it's in filter, liquify. Here we go. There we go. So liquify tool, what you can do is you can go in. They have things like warp. They have push to the left. They have pucker, bloat, twirl clockwise, all that stuff. And you can edit the brush properties. And this is how you can affect things. So let's see, what are we on? We're on the warp tool. This essentially is going to help me stretch things out. I don't want to do that, but if you want to, you can. That's how I stretched the neck out originally. Another way you can do that is, and I'm going to cancel this. By the way, how you get back to that, how you get back to the warp tool or the liquify tool, you go to filter, you go to liquify, you click on that, it takes you right there. You click OK when you're done with your liquefying, how you like it. It's kind of its own setting tab, so don't worry about it. What was I going to say? How you can also like extend the neck, how I did beforehand, earlier on in my photo editing practices, was I would do the same thing I did with the arm, where I would select a piece of the head and then create a copy of it and then drag it up and then create another copy of that and then drag it up and then blend them all together by hand. That is one way of doing it. The only problem with that is you see a repeated pattern throughout the neck. So it looks like there are layers stacking up, which you don't necessarily want. So using a combination of that plus the liquify tool, of creating duplicates of the neck plus the liquify tool, helps with extending torso or arms or anything like that. Really just extending any existing feature that you want to be longer or wider or bigger or anything like that. So that's what I did here with the neck. And then I went to this image here and I took the head, put the head on a different layer, copied it, added it up to the top so that I had that there. At the same time, I used, and I already showed you how to do the copy thing. Again, you use the lasso tool, you drag that up, or you can use quick selection. There are a bunch of selection tools. There's object selection, there's lasso, there is magnetic lasso tool. There's a bunch of stuff you can use. But I usually just use the regular old lasso tool. What I also did, and to get rid of the features on the face, which is a common theme in a lot of my pictures, is removing features of my face. I would grab either the selection tool, like the lasso tool, take out parts of my skin from other parts of my body and graft them onto my eyes or something like that to replace that feature. Or I would use the heel brush tool. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. As it's either remove tool or the spot healing brush tool. There's a bunch of different tools you can use. And what I will do is I will go in and I will manually like draw around the eye, and it will replace the eye. How the tool works is it will replace the features you draw on with anything around it. So essentially I'll just fill it in with skin, and it looks really weird. And actually it does weird stuff like this sometimes, where it'll just cover it over, or it'll create this weird thing. Like, I don't know where it's pulling this lighter pigment from, but it is. So I'll take it, I guess. But what I did there is I just scrawled all over my eyes with the heel brush tool, and then I just completely covered it up, which created this monstrosity of an image. We'll go over that one in a second. This implements a lot of the concepts I was talking about earlier with using the lasso tool to select part of an arm or a neck, stretch it, and then copy that again. So I think I copied this 3 times. This arm is like 3 forearms long, because what I did is I took my forearm, selected it, copied it, dragged it down, meshed it together with the heel brush tool, and then did that one more time and called it good. Meanwhile, there's a picture on my Instagram with a really long neck. That is completely done with the Liquify tool and the duplication lasso like system. I combined those two. We'll go back over this in a second though. For now, we're going to keep going over this. So heel brush tool is a good way to get rid of eyes. You can do that manually. The heel brush is a little more automatic. I don't recommend generative fill for removing eyes. It does it in a very lifeless way that isn't really creepy. It just kind of washes it. I'll show you an example later. That's just kind of boring. But yeah, I don't recommend it. It's not very fun. It also doesn't challenge you and stuff. But yeah, anyways, next layer are the two separate eyes, and I have those on the separate layers actually. What I did was I took this picture where I have a flashlight turned on pointed at my face. So this is a 3-picture image. I composited out of 3 separate images now. One where I have a remote in one hand, one in the other where this light wasn't on, and then the third image is this one to capture my eyes because I knew my eyes needed to be illuminated in this image. So what I did was I went in, I used the lasso tool, I selected the eyes how I wanted them to. I did, let's see, copy, new layer via copy. Nope, I was selected on the wrong thing, so it didn't select anything. So you got to select the right layer, right? So I'm selecting this one because I'm pulling from this one. New layer via copy. I'm going to turn this off. See how that's the only thing that shows up, but see how bright it is? Now I didn't want it that bright, so what I did was I went to the layer, I went to opacity, I dragged it down so it was slightly more opaque. Less opaque. More see-through. Words are hard today. It's been I'm tired, man. Listen, it's not going well. And you erase the parts of the eye that you don't want. That was a little much, so we're going to bring the opacity back up a little bit. And again, this is just a rough draft. I was doing much more effort into it back when I was doing this for assignments. And then you put the eye right there. And if you tinker around with it enough, it'll look like this instead, right? So this is a little obvious. That's a little bit too blunt. That's one thing I would go back and change is I would kind of reduce the opacity in these just by a little bit, like right there. Let's go 18. Cool. And 18. There you go. It's a bit more subtle, but also it's a bit more jarring too as far as an image goes, just because it blends in a bit more well. It blends in better with the skin and with like the rest of the creature when you're looking at it from afar. So you barely see the eyes and you see them, you're like, oh fuck, that's not where the head is supposed to be. So it kind of tricks you. So that's how you do that. And then the final thing I do with every single image is I take all of my layers. I forgot to highlight that one too, so the arm is all the way down there, just making it a little more uncanny. Select all my layers, which you can do by click and then shift click on however many you want to select. So shift click to 2, to the background, doesn't matter. And then you can go to flatten image. And what that will do is that will give you a flattened image of all those layers. It'll comprise it into one, which if you're printing, if you're sending it to a printer, that's a good idea because it's less information for the printer to, print. And then I modify that layer and give it grain and I give it a vignette. So as you can see, this is grainier and has a vignette around it. It has some like final touch-ups, which how you get to that is you can go to filter. You go to filter, you go to noise, you can go to blur, which actually for some of my pictures I do use blur to give a sense of motion. So if you want to do, let's see, motion blur, that's usually good for that. You can go to noise, you can do add noise, you can do even reduce noise. It's a little bit iffy of a AI system though. And then camera raw filter is nice. It's very, very useful. If you shoot your pictures in RAWs, which you should be shooting all of your pictures in RAWs, don't shoot in JPEG. Go away. Then you can, if you shoot in RAWs, then you can open up Camera Raw, which let you kind of have more control over the lighting of your picture, right? Gives you a lot more versatility. You can change exposure, highlights, blacks, whites, shadows, contrast, exposure, all that stuff. And you can also go down to optics. You can go to distortion, vignette. This is where I change all my vignettes. Yeah, pretty much. I like adding a vignette to cancel all changes. Yeah, I want to cancel changes. So I like to add a vignette because it kind of zones in the viewer on the image, like where I want them to look. It kind of creates shadow around it because people naturally look towards a brighter area in an image than a darker area. It's called contrast theory. We think that the eye naturally goes towards the brighter area in an image or in an environment. So if I have a dark border around the edges, it kind of moves the eye further into the image, which is really useful. And that's what I did here. And your eye is kind of split between down here, where you see the weird arm, and up here where you see these eyes piercing out of that dark space. Let's go on to the next one. This is one of my favorites. Let's completely delete all of this. So originally I started with 3 separate images. I started with this one. I don't think I ever used this one though. So I use this one. For some reason I have this dark space in this one. I don't know why. I have this image, and then I have, I believe, this image. So I have these 3. And what I essentially did was I needed, oh no, that's not entirely true. I had another image too. I don't know where it went though. That's not good. This one, there we go. So this one, and this one. These were the 3 images that I used for this picture. I only used these 3 as far as I'm aware. I might have used another one for extra black space to kind of add into the photo, but primarily it's just these 3 images to create all of this right here. So how I did that was I started off with just this, and I believe I pulled from this image right here so I could capture some of the more of an inky black space here so I could get rid of this arm. I also wanted to get rid of the face, so I used the clone stamp tool to get rid of part of the face and the arm, which would eventually lead to me taking, I believe, this mouth right here, taking out the teeth in that eventually, copying it and making it big, kind of like this, and eventually kind of adding more skin to that. So far I just kind of had that was the entire picture, was just this kind of blank space of a mouth kind of opening, because I knew I wanted a hand to reach out of the hole. How I did that was I went to a layer with a mouth on it. I cut it out, moved to use the lasso tool. I cut it out and made it bigger, grew it in size, and then kind of took out the tooth with, again, the clone stamp tool, which is right here. And then, yeah, I know. Give me a second. There, and then I just kind of selected and then sketched in where I wanted there to be more like flesh and stuff. What I did after that was I decided I wanted to add the arm from this image. So the reason why I couldn't naturally have my hand and my arm up or like this in the same picture was because I had a remote in my hands. So I had to take 3 different pictures. I had to have one hand down and one hand up. Then I had to switch over hands. And then I had to have one hand here and then one hand down with the remote. So this hand's holding the remote in this image, and this hand back here is holding the remote in that one. I composite both of them together, you get something like this, minus the weird face thing that I did, like that. Which this on its own is pretty nice. I don't mind this. I like this. But see what that does? So what I did was I cut my hand right here. I cut it out kind of like around this curve. And then you add this in, which is when I remove the picture that I have connected to this hand and I only have the other layers on there, I get the rest of it. I give these images and layers priority. So these kind of like exist over that. Let's see. Next thing I would do is I needed my hand to reach up. We're ignoring this part, but I did have that face there. Let's see. There you go. Next part was I wanted to add the hand in there. So this arm, what I did essentially, again, one hand holding the remote, the next hand covered in blood, reaching up into the sky, and then I essentially would just take the lasso tool, cut this out as I wanted to, duplicate it so that I only had this. And then as you can see, I put it where I wanted to, cut off the bottom of it to make sure, like erase the bottom of it to make it look nice with the eraser tool, make it look all fancy. Kept this in here. And then my friend helped me out with it, so I'm a little bit like confused on this part sometimes. He helped me with adding more shadows onto a layer. You can make a blend layer, which you can select certain blend modes, which will affect how an image blends in with the layer before it. So for this one, I'm using linear light. I don't know why linear light works best. You can select through multiples of them to see which one works best for you if you're trying to create shadows, because that's what this is doing. This is creating a shadow. Without it, it looks like this, which is the original version that I had. My friend looked at it. He said, hey, you should add a shadow there. I'm like, I just can't make them look good, because if I do the burn tool, then all I get is this really weird green complexion, which I will show you now. Kind of like that. And it doesn't look good. It like turns yellow and green and disgusting, and that doesn't look like a good shadow. So what he did is he showed me how to use the linear tool, or the blending tool. So you would go make a new layer. What you would do essentially is you can use burn, or you can take the paintbrush tool, get some black, and then just make the opacity and the hardness really low on that, draw on it, make it darker. And again, you're really going to want to mess around with the opacity on that. Even just a little bit makes it very, very potent. You're going to want to create hardness down, size, whatever you want. And then you can add a color shift to it, which is what he helped me do. So see down here how this still kind of shows up as yellow? What I did was I added a color fill to this specific spot, and I just made that more red. So this would show up as a bit darker. I also, if you notice, made some up here in the palm of the hand just to kind of make this artificial shadow look a bit more potent. So yeah, that was a lot. It's hard to explain this stuff when you're not making a new piece of work. Going back over it is difficult, especially since I didn't organize my layers very well at all. They're not very organized, and that's on me, sorry. Let's go back to this image for a second. This was the first picture I ever did that was horror related, and it was the easiest one, because what I did here essentially is I just took my legs right here and I literally just stretched them out with the selection tool. I just selected them, I lassoed them, stretched them, took a picture with me in the hallway and a picture without me in the hallway. And then I basically cut out parts of the picture with me in the hallway and put them put them in the picture where I'm not in the hallway. There we go. English is hard. And then stretch them and modify them to my pleasure and kind of add in the shadows that would have showed up in the other picture. Everything here is completely manipulated, stretched out, duplicated, and then blended together again using the using the heal tool. With the face, this is super pixelated because it's been processed so many times. I lost track of the original TIFF file where I can access the layers still. That's why it's so bad quality right now, is because it's been reused multiple times and this is a shared version. It's like deep fried images on Reddit. So yeah, I just essentially took the heal tool, selected the eyes, got them out, selected the mouth, got them out. The farther away it is, the easier because it is less quality. So you can use that to your advantage. I do a lot. I use pixelation and kind of this noise feature to make it seem like, yeah, this is a dark space, but also to kind of give this analog vibe, as well as remove detail. The less detail I have in the image, oddly enough, the creepier it can sometimes become, because one, it's more abstract, leaves stuff to the imagination. Two, they can't see the flaws in my editing. They just don't know how to look for it. Most people don't. I can't see it. It's like a good tool to use. You can cover up your mistakes. For is there something on my face? This is probably the second easiest one I've ever done. It's a lot of layers down here. That being said, pretty much all it is this image right here. I added borders onto it because I wanted to. Let's see. There we go, like that. So what I did was I just essentially took 3 pictures. Here, let's try and highlight these first because I don't want to accidentally unselect them and then reselect them and fuck everything up. There we go. Okay, cool. So what I did essentially was, and we're going to ignore this layer, we're just going to go back. I had this image with my hands like literally behind my back. I just kind of pressed them as hard as I could behind my back, so they're folded behind. And there's a bit of cut out there, ignore that. I had this image where I had one hand covering one eye, and then I had this image with the other hand covering it. What I decided to do was I would take bits from each hand as I see fit, and I would cut them off at the wrist so it looks like they're floating. I would add the other one, kind of fix minor things up. This is a minor touch up right here, this layer. The nose here is too bright because I'm pulling from, see how like right here, there's a little bit of shadow from this image hitting here, but there's no real shadow on the nose because there wasn't in that picture. So I have to artificially kind of create it and blend it in from the other picture. And then you can shadow along the bottoms if you did. I'm not sure if I did too much here in this image. Move that over a little bit. There we go. And then you add a vignette. There are certain ways you can do this that like certainly alleviate the load off your back, like make it much easier to do. But there are other ways where it's just like, yeah, you just got to cut off a hand, make sure you have like the right shadows in the right places. It's kind of like an asset management game. You just got to take from the right sources, know what you want, and then just blend it all together, make it look kind of seamless, which I could have done better here. In the hand right here, there's not a lot of shadow on the lips here, but there is right here. That's one area I could have done more work on. But yeah, I'm okay with it. Eventually, I kind of added a new layer. I made it taller, first of all. And then I decided to make it black and white. And then add a little bit more shading onto this part to make it more look like a bust of a statue. And yeah, actually, this is going up in an exhibit, I think, in a couple months. in actually a month, I think. Next month, I think this is going in an exhibit, as well as this picture right here. They're both going in an exhibit in one of the libraries in town. So that'll be fun to see. They might get taken down, though, because this one's kind of... it's not exactly library appropriate from what I'm being told. This one, yeah. This one, again, this is a one layer adjustment for a picture. That's it. I just took the mouth here. I cut out the mouth, made it super big, cut out the part of the mouth where like the hand was. So I just erased the mouth around the fingers. So it looks like the fingers are going into the mouth. Got rid of the teeth around the edges, and that's it. That's all I did for this image. And it looks better on phones because it's smaller and you can't see as much detail because of the noise. Again, I implore you, use whatever cheap and dirty tactics like noise or vignette or pixelation that you can. Because one, it creates a cool aesthetic. Two, it hides your mistakes. This one, not as well as one of my earlier practices. You can see how noisy that is. But you win some, lose some. And then, of course, I added a vignette and more noise and stuff like that. So, yeah. Experiment around with it. This was a really rough, loose kind of explanation of how to do that kind of stuff. I have a stream from a while ago where I did actually go in and do some of these by hand on stream as I did them. I'm not going to do that right now. I might make more pictures later and see how that works out. But my biggest advice is experiment around with it, fuck around with it, try a bunch of different things. If it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. You're not going to have bangers every single time. You're not going to have amazing pictures every single day of the week. For example, like this is one of the ones I did on stream. I think it's cool, but it doesn't really work. I like the original pictures where it's the three of me sitting without my eyes being messed up, or my hands for that matter. But like the hands were an experiment I never came back to, and I'm okay with that. I'm very much okay with, you know, the idea that okay, I tried that and it didn't work, and you should be too. It's good to try new things and have them fail, because that just means you have more time to focus on the things that you do want to succeed in and that you are interested in that do work, and you can polish those, which is how I got to the hand one with the hand reaching out of my neck. But yeah, this is just a really quick video tutorial on how I did those specific images. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. If I'm posting this on YouTube, I might not. We'll see what happens. And yeah, that's all I got, I think. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I might make another video where I'm actually creating an image on the fly, like while I'm doing it. Not just revising past images, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, thanks. Bye.